So it's maybe some mixed news for the kin of the Leagues of Votann today. Judgement Tokens still seem great. I'd guess that a lot of units' points are probably going down, but it does look like they've lost a whole ton of their special rules: auto wounds, void armor, beam weapons, and their ballistic skill of 3+, all being casualties. Let's talk about how they're doing in 10th. Hello and welcome back to Warspets Tactics, where today we're talking Leagues of Votann, Games Workshop having dropped us a whole bunch of previews as to their faction rules. As you could probably tell by the thumbnail, it does look like a whole load of mechanics are basically being consigned to the scrap heap, though it doesn't necessarily mean that the army is going to be weaker in 10th edition. Points cost will probably account for that, and Judgement Tokens are looking very nice indeed. First up, I thought more than most armies that they've previewed so far, we really do seem to be getting a bunch of different army trends from this preview. A lot of stuff that maybe just isn't to do with the main big army rules. First up, and perhaps one of the most important changes, is that the faction seems to be hitting on a 4+ across the board now. I guess certain elite units and characters might get a 3+, but it looks like for their generic units like the vehicles and the Hearthkyn, they only hit on 4s. It'll mean that their general purpose attacks are usually going to be a lot more vulnerable to modifiers, but it kind of looks like they're going to have a similar sort of feel to the Tau, where you'll now regain a ballistic skill of 3+ if you manage to get a judgment token on your target. So as with Tau and Markalites, I feel like there's going to be a big emphasis on farming those out. It looks like the faction's base leadership is going to be a 7+. Not great news for Battle Shock there, I suppose. I feel like that's going to bite quite hard on some units. Seems that this is going to be the case again for standard units like the Hearthkyn and the vehicles. Means that they'll have a 42% chance of failing Battle Shock normally, even if there's no modifiers. Another mechanic that seems to have gone is the Armor of Contempt style void armor that they had, the one where you'd worsen AP on enemy units attacking them. Seems like that just might not be any longer a thing altogether. I guess it's possible they might get something like a stratagem for it, in a similar sort of way as Space Marines have one to add one to their armor saves. I kind of wonder if they might be representing it by giving units extra toughness. I did notice that the Hearthkyn Warriors have gone up to toughness 5 now, and that will be a decent durability buff to them. I feel like maybe a few fun flavorful things have been lost on their weapons. It's bad news for people who like their beam weapons, I'm afraid. They no longer really have the same sort of effect. Previously you could skewer multiple units with a beam attack, and then that meant that you could hit multiple squads in one turn, and it could lead to some interesting positioning trying to get shots that run through multiple targets. I'm afraid that that entire thing is completely gone, doesn't seem to be a thing at all for them. Looks like beam weapons just get fairly powerful versions of the sustained hits rules, so are a lot more normal and less different to previously. The rare weapons have lost some things but kept others. Previously in 9th edition they managed to ignore invul saves, maybe being part of the proliferation of that a lot of people weren't too big a fan of. So far it seems that Games Workshop has removed every single ignores invuls mechanic that we've seen so far, bar mortal wounds, and again it seems like these things aren't going to be punching through on natural defences anymore. I guess that is unless you roll a 6, as they have got the devastating wounds rule, so that's the one where you translate their base damage into mortal wounds. That's an interesting kind of way that they've kept their splash damage that they had previously. So if you look out and roll a 6 to wound, they'll still be potentially deleting entire squads. Finally for the weapons, the hunter weapons are kind of just the generic Warhammer 40k weapon profile now. To be honest, it was kind of funny that these were a special rule in the first place, as basically their only special rule was the absence of all other special rules, weapons that neither take a heavy weapon penalty nor are assault or rapid fire. It means that the translation to 10th edition weapon profiles might not have made so much difference for them, I suppose. I'm sure a lot of this will probably sound like bad news, and I'm sure a lot of people might be saying that in the comments, but I feel like between all these mechanics changing, it almost certainly means that a lot of points cost for units are going down. In 9th edition Leagues of Votann units got day 1 points increases, and then more after that, just due to how overpowered Games Workshop managed to make the codex at their drop, and it meant that they had to be increased quite a lot to bring them in line with the other armies. If things like void armor are going away, they've got low ballistic skill, and some of their weapons don't do quite as crazy things, I can't help but think that that probably means that the Leagues of Votann models will be costing a few less points than the premium that they have, so you'd be able to field a few more of them in your army. I guess it might mean for people who have a 2000 point force that they might need to add another unit or two, but I personally feel like this is more of a return to what they were intended to be, rather than having to pay through the nose for every unit just to how crazy they made the judgment tokens and things. Otherwise though, besides those general trends, we've also got the main reveals of their actual new rules. Judgement Tokens and the Eye of the Ancestors is very much the faction rule still. It's changed quite a bit, where now you only want 2 tokens on your enemy units rather than 3, and it's now a +1 to hit and wound if you have 2 of them. Still looks very meaningful and a very big damage boost, and maybe might be a little bit more sensible than just flat out ignoring the wound roll for so many units across the board. The generic starter detachment for the Leagues of Votann is called the Oathbound detachment, and the special rule for this is called Ruthless Efficiency. This one's basically focus down one enemy unit with Judgement Tokens and get a CP reward for it, maybe a tiny bit odd as a detachment rule. We've then got some weapon profiles for the SP Conversion Beamer on those Brockier fire support suits, a reactive reprisal stratagem to return fire similar to the Sisters, and then 2 datasheet reveals in the Hearthkyn Warriors and the Hekaton Land Fortress, 2 quite useful ones that give us a whole ton of weapon profiles. First up, let's start with perhaps the most important thing, and those fancy Judgement Tokens. These are the ones that in 9th edition are basically auto-wound the enemy on a 6-5 or 4+, and perhaps just aren't a particularly popular thing to play against just due to how easily they overcome high toughness values, making Leagues of Votann just super efficient against tough armies, and bad news in particular for things like Imperial Knights or Custodes. The way that these work have been changed a bit. You only have the one major way to give them out now, which is when the enemies actually kill your units. If an enemy unit kills a League of Votann unit, it gets 1 Judgement Token, and then it can continue to acquire them up to a maximum of 2. My guess is that there'll probably be multiple other ways to hand out Judgement Tokens to enemy units via special rules or stratagems. As you can currently, I strongly suspect that the Carl will be able to, and there might well be stratagem options like that Hearthkyn Pioneer Searchlight. It does seem that the one for standing on objectives or doing actions is gone though. Now the damage buff, if you've got 1 Judgement Token, is that your units get +1 to hit against that unit, restoring the Leagues of Votann from their 4+ to their 3+, and then if the unit's got 2 Judgement Tokens on it, then you get +1 to hit and a much more important +1 to wound in my opinion. Again, keeping at least a little bit of the flavour of Leagues of Votann units being able to punch up against really tough targets, but now the damage buff is going to be at least a little bit less skewed just to ignoring high toughness things, and it's going to be a bit more effective against everything. In terms of how good the new mechanic is, for any of your units that are shooting on a 4+, that will be a 33% damage increase, really quite respectable. And then when you get the +1 to wound as well, that goes to a massive damage increase. If you're already wounding on a 3+, that's a 66% damage increase. On a 4+, that'll be 87%. And then if you're hitting on 4 and wounding on 5, you're basically getting double damage by having 2 Judgement Tokens. Pretty nasty stuff, and being able to hand these out to big important units in the enemy army is going to be big. Overall, it still seems very, very strong. Maybe a few less of them flying around due to having a little bit less ways to hand them out at base, but now I guess you only need 2 of them per unit for maximal effects, and it's still going to be really quite big for punching up against tough stuff, as you get such a big damage increase if you're wounding things on a 5+. I still think that with these kind of mechanics, the Leagues of Votann are going to be a bit of a skewed army that are good at taking down big tough single units. Again, things like Custodians and Knights spring to mind. They'll have less important units, so you can focus your Judgement Tokens all on them. The strength of it might also depend on how many other ways there are to hand out Judgement Tokens. If there's loads of other super easy ways to hand them out, then I guess that will make them even stronger. Moving on, and as well as the core faction special rule, we've also got Ruthless Efficiency. This is the one that's going to be conferred by their detachment, the Oathbound Launch Detachment. This one's got a kind of interesting detachment special rule, and it's very focused on just the one enemy unit. Before the game, the buff is that you get to basically mark one enemy unit to start on 2 Judgement Tokens and make them very, very easy to kill. If it's the start of the battle, then I guess you'd do that after deployment, I suppose, so you could see where your opponent has set it up and how easy it is to get your hands on it. I guess the ideal target would usually be something like a big unit of Terminators or a big Knight to get some big damage boosts. I feel like it's going to be a lot less usable against lots of small unit enemies if you've got loads of individual units where you don't really care too much about killing any one of them. Might be even further doubling down of Leagues of Votann being strong against single units. Then the objective is to make that damage output count as soon as possible. You get command points for killing it as early in the game as you can. If it's completely exposed and you manage to lay waste to it in the very first turn, then you get a meaty 3 command points, which seems like quite a nice benefit. If you manage to lay it low in turns 2 or 3, phrased as before your 3rd or 4th command phase, then you gain 2 CP, and then if you manage to kill it in turn 4, then you get 1 CP, and all of these are handed out in your next command phase after the unit dies. I think realistically, usually on battle round 1, it's a little bit unlikely to be killing any one unit if the enemy is trying to hide the big stuff. Hopefully aiming for that 2 CP might be the most realistic thing, could be a welcome boost in the mid game. It's kind of interesting the rider on this that says that you can gain these in addition to your normal limit of CP regenerated. Seems that they've kept that rule where you can only gain 1 command point regardless of source in each battle round. So any of the armies that we've seen already that can generate CP quite easily, if they've got 2 such units, then it's still only going to count once. I do kind of feel that this is a bit of a swingy faction rule though. In some games it's going to be absolutely great when you mark something big and your opponent can't help but lose it, or say if you're playing some Tricksy Eldar or something and you mark a unit and then they just decide to hide with it for the rest of the game, then your detachment rules might not have all that much effect, besides maybe messing with the opponent's positioning and how cagey they need to play with one unit. Next up, and we've just got the one main weapon preview this time, though we've seen the profile of a whole bunch more of them on the datasheets as we'll go through later. Seems that the new rules for the Leagues of Votann conversion beamer are this: 24-inch range, so down a little bit there, a single shot hitting on a 4+, strength 7, AP -1 and damage 3, and then it seems that the conversion and the beam rule have a couple of different special rules that go together to have its main effect. Apparently the conversion rule means that on a 4+ you get a critical hit if your target is greater than 12 inches away. That goes in with the conversion beam law that they're better against targets that are further away. And then they've got the sustained hits D3 special rule, which means they'll get an extra D3 hits on the target if they get a critical hit. It basically will usually add up to only D3 extra hits on 6s at less than 12 inches, but on their normal ballistic skill it means that every hit at greater than 12 inches will land those extra D3. Averaging out at each successful hit is 3 hits on the target. Overall, taking into account the chance of missing, that means that the damage output for these is usually going to be 4 or 5 hits on your enemy. Maybe not terrible, but doesn't seem super exciting without the +1 to wound of Judgement Tokens. That's 1 or 2 dead Intercessors, 1 dead Terminator, around about 1 failed save to a Rhino or Repulsor, or only half a failed save to a Land Raider. I must admit, for a dedicated fire support unit, that doesn't seem very exciting to me. I suppose they might get some other cool rules, or they might be able to get some character buffs, and of course Judgement Tokens would help quite a lot, though it's much more important that they get the +1 to wound for this unit as opposed to +1 to hit, as the +1 to hit wouldn't trigger their sustained hits rule. Next up, we've got a stratagem called Reactive Reprisal. This one's basically a return fire type stratagem, kind of similar to the one that we had the Sisters previewed for yesterday, but does have a bit of a different flavour. It's got different restrictions and targets, plus it's got higher CP cost. For this one, the biggest restriction is that it has to be against an enemy unit that's already got a Judgement Token on it. You can't just return fire against everything, but if your opponent's got a Judgement Token, then it's fair game. I guess that'll also help out with the damage output when you do return the shots. Compared with the Sisters one, it does cost 1 more command point, which is kind of painful in 10th, but I guess this does have the potential to affect a very big unit. In particular, it seems kind of scary for the Hekaton Land Fortress, so if you shot that big thing with a Judgement Tokened unit, then you can suddenly eat some railguns and bolt cannons to the face. Certainly seems like it's got the potential to be very dangerous, particularly if the enemy unit attacking has 2 Judgement Tokens on it, and it also gets +1 to wound against it. I guess it's just more of a question as to whether or not the 2 CP is really worth other things that you can spend CP on. There's a lot of powerful stratagems going around in 10th edition, and I'm sure the Votann will have others to compete with this. I suppose it could be extra nice if any of the HQ choices get that free stratagem type special rule that the Space Marine Captain did. It's not impossible that we could see that even on the Carl. Finally, we get a look at 2 different datasheets, the Hekaton Land Fortress and the Hearthkyn Warriors. The big chunky tank of the Leagues of Votann, I'd argue, has probably got a bit of a tone down compared with previous, though as mentioned earlier in the video, I strongly suspect that that might well come with a decent points reduction, as this thing's whole offering was kind of crazy for the 230 points that it initially cost in the Codex. For its stat line and raw rules nerfs, it has taken a few things. It hits on a 4+, not a 3 like the rest of the Leagues of Votann it would seem. That's going to be quite painful on things like the railgun in particular. It'll make it feel super swingy. I guess the aim would be to get it up to Ballistic Skill 3+ by handing out plenty of those Judgement Tokens, maybe not too dissimilarly from Town Marker Lights. The Leadership 7+ is kind of low on such a big beast, means that it's definitely got the potential to take Battle Shock when it's less than half wounds, and otherwise its defensive profile maybe feels pretty similar, a big toughness 12 the same as Land Raiders, a 2+ save, though it does appear to have lost its Void Armor, so you're not reducing enemy AP anymore. Weapons wise, I feel like these are the sort of guns that might need a bit of math hammer to distinguish them. Perhaps if I get a chance I might take a look in another video, but going through them briefly now, the Magna Rail Cannon is a single shot at 30 inches, hitting on a 4+ with strength 18, AP 4 and damage D6 +6, maybe in a similar sort of place to where it was before to be honest, but it has had the rather big nerf of losing its Ignores Invul rule. Still though, it's certainly going to be a tank weapon to be feared. There's every chance that if you just fire this thing up, it's going to just blast an enemy vehicle straight off the table. In reality though, a lot of the time it's just going to fail, either fail the hit or wound roll, or the enemy is going to ping it off an invul. Devastating wounds will give it the magic 6 to wounds, would get you a whole bucket of mortal wounds though, That's going to happen very rarely, but I guess in effect that would be an ignores invul mechanic, and also if you were firing against something hefty like Terminators, you might be deleting multiple models in a single shot. It's also a heavy weapon as well, so this is the only one that cares about whether or not your land fortress is moving, hitting on a 3+ if it's stationary, though I feel like a lot of the time you won't really want to be due to gaining lines of sight. Otherwise, we've got the SP Heavy Conversion Beamer. This one again has lost the beam type rule, and it's also a bit shorter range at 24 inches. This just looks like a big version of the one carried by those Brock here. Sustained hits D3 for anything that's greater than 12 inches, and this one hits with a big strength 10, AP -2 and damage 4, so it's pretty general purpose with all those potential hits. The last of the 3 guns is the Cyclic Ion Cannon, D6 plus 3 attacks, hitting on strength 9, AP -2 and damage 2. I feel like damage 2 weapons might just be a bit more general purpose now, as we don't really seem to have seen any -1 damage in 10th edition so far. For the secondary weapon systems, maybe not all that much has changed. The Master Autocannons, 6 shots at strength 7, AP -1 and damage 2. The bolt cannons and the ion beamers have maybe seen a small nerf in the way that they've become twin-linked weapons, so I guess that means you're getting fewer shots than before, though it does look like those shots pick up sustained hits. The ion beamers get D3 sustained hits, but have really quite a short range at 18 inches. Then you've got the choice between the missile launcher, which is a single ignores line of fire shot, D6 plus 3 attacks at strength 7, AP 2 and damage 2. Fairly scary stuff to be honest, and you'd have to weigh that up against ignore cover for your big land fortress all game long. I feel like those two are actually looking a lot more balanced now. Scary one-shot missile salvo that can take a big chunk out of one of the most important hiding enemy units, or of the reliability of not getting enemies up to very stacked saves. Finally, it looks like its special rule is the carbon copy of that Falcon Grav tank special rule. Maybe this is going to be somewhat the norm for transports that also have big guns. If your Hekaton land fortress gets a hit on an enemy unit, you can buff the units inside shooting to get 4 reroll wounds against that same target, so maybe ping an ion beamer or bolt cannon into it and drastically buff your shooting power. I guess that won't help you things like the Chthonian Berserks, but could be interesting enough on the Vulcanite from the Hearthguard or the Hearthkyn Warrior shots. Overall, in terms of raw power, at least directly compared with 9th, I'd say that this has been toned down a bit. If that comes with a suitable toning down in points cost though, that might not be the worst. These things do take up a really big chunk of your army right now. Finally, last but not least, we've got the Hearthkyn Warriors. Your standard space dwarves have seen again a few nerfs, I'd say. No void armor to worsen enemy AP. They only hit on a 4+ now, not a 3+, unless you've got Judgement Tokens. And they're also a bit worse in combat as well. Previously they had 2 attacks at strength 4, now it's down to 1. The big buff that they got though was going up from toughness 4 to toughness 5, so things like a lot of general bolt rifles and things will be wounding them on 5s now, and that is rather nice. I guess that's maybe to represent their void armor if they're not going to have a fancy special rule for it. Weapons wise, they've got really quite a lot going on. Maybe nothing enormously crazily surprising out of this. A lot of AP has gone down a little bit, as seems to be the trend in 10th edition. The bolters are AP 0 and get 2 shots out at 24 inches, a very similar profile to the Chaos Space Marine bolter it would seem. Their ion blasters seem kinda similar, single shots at AP 2 to 18 inches. Like the big land fortress one, the rail rifle no longer ignores invuls, and this one's heavy on a 5+, so you're going to be taking some painful penalties if you move and shoot it. They've got a bunch of other slightly tweaked profiles for the other heavy and special weapons, though I did notice that they've got a profile for the high-las rotary cannon, which they also pointed out in the article. This one's apparently to represent the option that they get for it in their new Votann kill team in Gallowfall, though at least from this datasheet there's nothing really to imply that they're going to be getting any profile for the jump pack Votann guy. I'm genuinely not too sure whether he'd get any full 40k rules. It seems kind of inevitable though that Leagues of Votann will get a jump pack unit when their next codex and wave of releases comes out. Finally, looks like the kin melee weapons on the Sergeant gets an AP -2 and damage 2 now. A small buff there perhaps, though they only get 2 attacks rather than 3. Upgrades wise, it still seems that the ones that you can pile onto this unit are pretty interesting. The scanner pack still ignores cover. The comms array is maybe a little bit hit and miss now. It now means that you get the chance to regenerate command points when you target this unit for stratagems, maybe just making them just a little bit more of a tempting target perhaps. And the medipack still looks like it will be really quite useful depending on the points cost that they charge for it. It gives the unit a 6+ feel no pain, and between that and toughness 5 it does look like the squad might be kind of annoying to take off the table. The Weaver Feel crest on the Thane Sergeant, that gets a 4+ invul as well, so I guess he'd just be a little bit harder to take down. It might even weirdly be worth tanking damage on him first, unless he gets the kin melee weapons thrown in for free. Finally, the special rule is their Leagues of Votann watchwords: luck has, need keeps, toil earns. Despite rousing rhetoric, I'd say that this is maybe just a little bit on the underwhelming side. It's basically sticky objectives, so if you move off the objective, you still get to hold it until your opponent takes it away. It's definitely not a bad rule to have. It maybe gives you a small advantage to starting a Hearthkyn Warrior unit on your home field objective, perhaps. It might give you a few more options later in the game. But in general, I feel like this is a unit that aren't going to be going anywhere particularly fast. They're only 5-inch move. I feel like they're often going to be a unit that just wants to move up to the objective and then sit on it and defend it, and not really go off charging off the objective and hoping that it just doesn't get taken again. Definitely a nice to have. I guess it might be a common one on really quite a lot of troops, but maybe not super duper helpful here. Overall seems fun though, maybe a bit of a nerf to their damage output with only hitting on 4s. Getting a big toughness 5 though will definitely keep them a lot more safe against small arms. You'll need some heavier firepower to bring down the kin efficiently. In any case, let me know your thoughts on all these Leagues of Votann previews. I feel like compared with some faction previews, there's maybe not quite as much cause for celebration, but I feel like perhaps the change to Judgement Tokens is a fairly reasonable one. Still a very powerful damage output, but no longer ignoring the wound roll. And I'd guess that they get a lot of cheaper units due to losing special rules. Let me know your thoughts though. How keen are you going to be to play the kin in 10th? If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, or I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming. I do tend to post new ones just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos and 40k news coverage, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description below if you're interested in helping support. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages: seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.